This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
Good evening, Philippines, and good day, world. I'm Jayne Codnita. It's Wednesday, the 6th of September, and you're watching Newsline World. We're here to bring you the top stories we've gathered from all over the globe. First, the Philippines asserted the need for the swift creation of the South China Sea Code of Conduct during the 43rd ASEAN Summit in Jakarta, Indonesia. Our SMNI correspondent and MJ Mondihar will give us more details about this later on. As the Russia-Ukraine conflict grinds on, President Vladimir Putin fires at the West and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy about Nazism in Kyiv. In Brazil, thousands have been displaced due to a powerful extratropical cyclone that ravaged the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Thailand's political deadlock has finally come to an end after a new government has sworn into power. And two oil-rich countries, Saudi Arabia and Russia, extended oil cuts that resulted into the spike of prices. These and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. First in our news, top officials from the Philippines and China met at the ASEAN-China Summit in Jakarta, Indonesia, wherein President Bongbong Marcos stressed the swift creation of the Code of Conduct for the South China Sea. MJ Mondihar for this report.
President Bongbong Marcos and Chinese Premier Li Qiang held talks at the ASEAN-China Summit here in Jakarta, Indonesia. This meeting occurred amid tensions between the Philippines and China over disputed territories in the South China Sea. During the gathering of various ASEAN heads of state, President Marcos Jr. expressed the Philippines' stance on the territorial dispute.
We must emphasize that practical cooperation in the maritime domain can only flourish with an enabling environment of regional peace, security, stability, anchored in international law.
President Marcos also reiterated the Philippines' commitment to asserting its rights in a contested territory along with Chinese Premier Li. Prior to the 43rd ASEAN Summit, China released a new 10-dash line map for the South China Sea, which drew rejections from other countries, including the Philippines, with the Department of Foreign Affairs calling the 10-dash line unacceptable.
The Philippines, therefore, continues to uphold the primacy of the 1982 UN Convention under the Law of the Sea as the framework within which all activities in the seas and oceans are conducted. We once again reaffirm our commitment to the rule of law and peaceful settlements of disputes.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo, who now chairs the ASEAN, emphasized the importance of mutual respect among claimant nations in the South China Sea to maintain peace. To ease tensions in the disputed territory, President Marcos stressed the urgency of finalizing the Code of Conduct, or COC, for the South China Sea.
The early conclusion of an effective and substantive COC that is in accordance with international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS, remains the goal for ASEAN and for China.
The Philippines hosted the latest discussion on the COC formation last August, wherein the country previously stated that a conducive environment was needed before a code of conduct could be established, especially in light of the recent water cannon incident during a resupply mission at the Union Shoal.
The Philippines firmly rejects misleading narratives that frame the disputes in the South China Sea solely through the lens of strategic competition between two powerful countries. This not only denies us our independence and our agency, but it also disregards our own legitimate interests.
For now, the Presidential Communications Office is yet to release the details of what transpired between the meeting of President Marcos and Premier Li. For Government of the Philippines, I'm Jayne Mondihar, SMNI News.
Japan's Prime Minister promised that his country will help ASEAN member states strengthen their digitalization and maritime safety. Natsumi Kojima has the details.
Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has promised to strengthen support to Southeast Asia countries in the maritime safety and digitalization sector. Japan launched a new initiative aimed at strengthening maritime security with ASEAN nations as well as boosting digitalization cooperation with them and training at least 5,000 people over the next 3 years. This plan was announced in a speech to the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum in Jakarta, Indonesia, which is set to host a summit of the ASEAN nations this week. Kishida, together with the ASEAN's top country leaders, will hold a special summit in December in Tokyo to celebrate 50 years of relations, noting that the cooperation between the ASEAN and Japan started in 1973. Kishida is on a trip to Indonesia for the ASEAN Summit. He will then travel to India to attend for the G20 Summit in New Delhi. Ijo, Nihon kara Kojima Natsumi, News Otsutai shimashita. SMNI News, Japan.
President Bongbong Marcos has secured multi-million-dollar investment pledges from Indonesian investors. MJ Mondihar has the details.
The conversation between Indonesian investors and President Bongbong Marcos during the silence of the 43rd ASEAN Summit in Jakarta, Indonesia has been fruitful. 3 leading companies engaged with the president. First is PT Vaksindo Satwa Nusantara, specializing in vet vaccines. They plan to invest $2 million in the Philippines in collaboration with Unico Incorporated Philippines. This is expected to assist the government's efforts in combating avian influenza. Next, President Marcos spoke with PTWIR Asia TBK, a metaverse firm specializing in AR, VR, and artificial intelligence. The Indonesian company intends to invest $20 million in the Philippines and also plans to support small businesses in the country. President Marcos also engaged with Pacific Satellite Nusantara, or PSN. The company aims to contribute to improving digital connectivity in the Philippines. In fact, they are planning to establish a satellite in the country. Once completed, they will be able to provide a whopping 13.5 gigabytes per second internet bandwidth to the government and the consumer market in the Philippines. The company is set to launch its satellite in December of this year. In total, Indonesian investors are set to pour $22 million in investments based on the president's meetings. Meanwhile, the president and the Indonesian business sectors held a fruitful meeting in Jakarta. Both sides agreed to strengthen their ties in rice research, agricultural technology, food security, government entities, and climate change solutions.
With strong partnerships, I see many opportunities for ASEAN partner countries and the Philippines to further strengthen our ties in trade and investment.
So depending on the country, where their strength is, that is where we're asking help. That's where you can see the real purpose of ASEAN. And that is greater collaboration on all areas.
It is always a game plan of President Marcos Jr. to promote the Philippines as the #1 investment destination globally. The same thing that he did here at the ASEAN Summit. Forgettable of Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SMNI News.
China's foreign ministry has indicated that Chinese President Xi Jinping will not attend the upcoming G20 summit in India this weekend. Sasha Hasa reports.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang will lead the delegation representing China at the G20 summit this weekend. Chinese President Xi Jinping will skip the international gathering of world leaders for the first time since the summit was held in 2008. Li is considered as China's second-ranking leader. The premier and other Chinese delegates will represent the country for the 2-day G20 summit on September 9 and 10 in the Indian capital of New Delhi. The ministry announced Xi's absence from the international gathering as tensions simmer between China and the host country India over their disputed border and New Delhi's growing ties with the United States. Both countries are also members of the grouping of fast-emerging economies known as BRICS. Russian President Vladimir Putin will also skip the summit. He will be represented instead by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. As international observers presumed Xi's absence from the event as a snub to India, China's Foreign Affairs Ministry has not indicated the exact reason for Xi's non-attendance to the international gathering of world leaders. The G20 summit consists of the world's 19 wealthiest countries plus the European Union. The bloc accounts for 80% of the global gross domestic product, or GDP, and about 2/3 of the world population. Reporting from Sydney, this has been Sasha Hasa, SMNI News, Australia.
The Philippine envoy to the United States has outlined a potential schedule for President Bongbong Marcos's upcoming visit. MJ Mondihar is back for more news.
Even though November is still some distance away, potential events for President Bongbong Marcos's visit to the United States are already being planned. This includes the president's attendance at the APEC summit from November 15 to 18. According to U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Jose Manuel Romualdez, the president's schedule will be quite hectic, including a visit to Hawaii.
And then the president plans to visit another city in the West Coast, and then from there possibly go to other. Maybe we're still trying to work out a short stay at a short visit in Honolulu. There's a large Filipino community there, but all of these schedules are still being worked out.
Hawaii holds a significant place in the president's family history. After the EDSA People Power Revolution, the Marcos family lived there for some time, which is why they have a strong support in that U.S. state. Meanwhile, investors are eager to meet President Marcos in his upcoming visit to the U.S. According to Ambassador Romualdez, Silicon Valley investors are particularly keen to have an audience with the president.
Yes, definitely. The Silicon Valley tech companies are very eager to meet with him. And there's also quite a number of requests from financial institutions. There are also companies that are in the manufacturing business in the West Coast. And probably a follow-up on the nuclear, the small modular nuclear power plants that we've been talking about. There are a number of companies that are based in the West Coast.
President Marcos had already expressed his gratitude to the Filipino community in Hawaii, as some of our kababayans visited Malacanang last year. From Jakarta, Indonesia, for Government of Philippines, I'm Jayne Codnita, SMNI News.
More news when Newsline World returns. Back in our news, former President Rodrigo Duterte has something to say regarding the possible cooperation between the Commission on Human Rights and the International Criminal Court in its insistence on interfering in the country to investigate his previous administration's war on drugs campaign. Ina Mortel has the details.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte shrugged off the statements of the Commission on Human Rights, or CHR, after saying that it was ready to cooperate with the International Criminal Court, or ICC, in the investigation to his war on drugs campaign. Chairperson Richard Palpalatok earlier said that the CHR would cooperate with the ICC as it is part of their mandate as a human rights institution and as an independent constitutional body not dependent on the directive of the President or the Executive Department. His words came amid ICC's insistence on their jurisdiction, although the Philippines had already withdrawn as a member of the Hague-based court back in 2019. And although President Bongbong Marcos said that the Philippines will no longer cooperate with the ICC, Palpalatok said that the CHR can still share the collected evidence with a foreign body. But former President Rodrigo Duterte already regarded Palpalatok's words as an old joke.
Old comedy, actually. Palpalatok could partner with anybody outside of the Philippine territory. I don't mind. Yung CHR, wala mo nagawa. Wala napakulang na isa eh. Wala mo sila nakita. Ano nakita nila? Extrajudicial. Yung na magkalaban yung kaaway, tatapon nila sa atin. Marami kayong daldal. Kung magulo ang bayan sa mga kriminal.
The former president also stands by the decisions he made during his administration.
Yung man na titigas ng ulo ninyo. Mabuti na lang 6 years lang ako na presidente. Totoo yan. Human rights, makinig kayo. Hindi ko malulusutin yan. I said once, I said it twice, and I will say it again. Do not destroy my country. Do not destroy our children. Because I will. Kung hindi mo ba naintindihan yan?
Duterte said he does not mind any doubts and untoward comments because all politicians and people in government are always being criticized.
I do not mind because people will always suspect. If you are in government and you stayed for a period ganon katagal. Sabi talaga yung mga buang, wala, imposible na hindi mo. Well, kung yan ang gusto mong isipin, go ahead. You have that luxury. What ako, tanong ang Diyos sa akin na, you are an upright. Well, God, not so much. I cannot say that I'm really upright and in the true sense of the word. Why? I have my, nagnakaw ka ba? Yan lang, hindi ko kaya. Hindi ko talaga ginawa yan.
Meanwhile, Pastor Apollo C. Cablelink praised the former president for the legacy he left behind during his administration and for all his sacrifices to protect the country from illegal drugs, crime, and corruption.
You are the only president who don't have a house in Manila. And you came back and you're still subsisting in your pension. Tulad ng sinabi mo, you cannot travel a lot now because ipit na yung pamasahe. Masyadong mahal na. So, I think that is what God had saw in you, in your heart, na naging gift ka sa amin dito sa Pilipinas. And we will really cherish that. That's why hanggang ngayon, the Filipinos loves you. 93% pa rin yung survey ng popularity mo. And we are, this is one of a kind. This is once in a time, I think, that a public servant can be as incorruptible as you, being in that position from the down, from where you were here, tapos God in heaven rose you up to that prominence. And we saw the 6 years you had. Yung lang, number one, yung build mo, your seriousness of fighting against drugs, na pati yung buhay mo, dinelikado mo na, pati yung mga opponents mo na inggit sa iyo, gusto ka pang tirahin sa ICC, human rights, gano'n. But you sacrificed all of that. Ang masasabi ko lang, yung sa Word of God, greater love hath no man than this, that a man will lay down his life for his friends. So, we thank you for this fight.
For God and My Beloved Philippines, this has been Ina Mortel, SMNI News.
Among the key topics discussed during the press conference of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is the future of the Black Sea grain deal. Verhil Paba reports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed that the West deceived Moscow about the humanitarian goals of the Black Sea Initiative during a joint press conference with Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan following talks in Sochi earlier this week. The Black Sea grain deal was signed in Istanbul in July 2022 between the representatives of Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, and the United Nations. It has been extended multiple times but expired on July 17, 2023 after Russia pulled out of the deal, saying that their side of the agreement was not being implemented. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy earlier stated that Kiev was determined to continue the work of the Black Sea Grain Initiative or its counterpart in a tripartite format including Ukraine, the UN, and Turkey. He claimed that the deal had ensured the exports of up to 33 million tons of agricultural produce to 45 countries of the world, with 60% shift to countries in Africa and Asia. But during the press conference with Erdogan, Putin revealed that most of it went to wealthy nations and only a few were delivered to countries that needed it most. Putin stressed that 32.8 million tons of cargo were exported from Ukraine and more than 70% went to wealthy countries, mostly in the European Union, while only 3% or less than 1 million tons of the cargo went to countries that need food assistance. Putin also pointed out that Russia would be ready to consider the possibility of resuming the grain deal if all the agreements to lift restrictions on exports of Russian agricultural products will be implemented. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, for his part, hopes that the deal would be revived one way or another. He revealed that a package of consultations with the UN was in the works. Erdogan also said, quote, the alternative proposals placed on the agendas did not meet expectations in terms of security and other aspects. Our Russian friends have made clear their expectations in this regard, and we emphasized these expectations at different platforms. To recall, the Foreign Ministry of Russia said that the blatant sabotage of the Black Sea grain deal defeats the purpose of continuing it, which did not live up to its humanitarian rationale, while Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that it could return as soon as the Russian part is implemented. The uncertainty of the future of the grain deal puts the rest of the world on edge. And to recall, last Sunday, which is days before the talks between Putin and Erdogan took place, Russia launched a barrage of drone attacks at a port located in Odessa region, and this port is being used by Ukraine to export grain. Ukraine's Air Force said they shot down 22 out of the 25 drones destined for the Danube River port infrastructure, the country's main route for shipping grain after the deal broke down in July. Reporting, this has been Verhil Parba, SMNI News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin made a shocking and straightforward comment against his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy and the West. and claimed that the West is using Zelensky's Jewish heritage to cover for the culpability of Ukrainian nationalists in the Holocaust during the Second World War. He also talked about Stepan Bandera, a Ukrainian prominent figure declared a war criminal by both Poland and the Soviet Union for killing Ukrainian Jews. Bandera was the leader of the militant arm of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists during World War II, and up to this day, he remains a divisive figure in Ukraine, with some hailing him as a liberator from the Soviets, while others consider him to be a Nazi collaborator for killing 1.5 million Ukrainian Jews and for living with his deputies under German protection after World War II started. Bandera was eventually assassinated by the Soviet spies in 1959. The Ukrainian government, however, declared Bandera a national hero in 2010. Zelenskyy is of Jewish heritage, while his grandfather, Semyon, fought in the Second World War and earned 2 Red Star medals for his courage and heroism. In a 2019 interview with broadcaster Ukrainska Pravda, Zelenskyy described Bandera as a hero for some Ukrainians, and that is normal and cool.
Западные кураторы поставили во главе современной Украины человека, этнического еврея с еврейскими корнями, с происхождением еврейским. И таким образом, на мой взгляд, они как бы прикрывают такую античеловеческую сущность, которая положена во фундамент, в основу современного украинского государства. И это делает всю ситуацию в высшей степени отвратительной. Тем, что этнический еврей прикрывает героизацию нацизма и прикрывает тех, кто возглавлял в свое время холокостное поколение. А это уничтожение 1,5 миллиона человек. И вы знаете, лучше всего это понимают простые граждане Израиля. Посмотрите, пожалуйста, что они говорят в интернете.
The United States authorities issued warnings to schools in the eastern part of the country due to the intense heat that forced many educational institutions to shift to remote learning. Vigan has the details.
Many schools in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA have switched to remote learnings due to intense heat waves. And this extreme weather is not only in Pennsylvania. In fact, the whole eastern part of the United States is currently grappling with intense weather. Several cities set records on Monday, marking it as the hottest Labor Day in history. Minneapolis recorded 98 degrees, while Atlantic City, New Jersey, recorded 94 degrees. And on Tuesday, the extreme heat wave was felt from Minnesota to Texas and to Massachusetts. The U.S. forecasted that the extreme heat wave could reach up to 99 degrees in Washington, D.C., 91 degrees in New York City, 97 degrees in Raleigh, North Carolina, 93 degrees in Minneapolis, 91 degrees in Chicago, 100 degrees in Oklahoma City, and 102 degrees in Dallas and San Antonio. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C. mayor issued a heat emergency warning. The city of New York has warned that temperatures could reach up to 90 degrees for 3 days, marking this as the city's first heat wave season. The intense heat will continue in the south from Texas to Florida, and temperatures could go higher throughout the week. Cablelink reporting, SMNI News.
Enrique Tario, former leader of the Proud Boys, has received a 22-year prison sentence, marking the longest prison term among the Capitol riot-related cases. Enrique Tario, former leader of the Proud Boys, has been sentenced to 22 years in federal prison for his involvement in organizing the January 6, 2021 U.S. Capitol riot. This marks one of the lengthiest sentences among the more than 1,100 Capitol riot-related cases. Tario's sentencing is tied to his role in seditious conspiracy, classified as an act of terrorism by the judge. But reports say Tario was not physically present in Washington, Washington on the day when thousands stormed the Capitol to disrupt the certification of President Joe Biden's election victory. During the sentencing, Tario said, and quote, "I am not a political zealot. Inflicting harm or altering election results was not my goal. Please show me mercy. I ask you not to take my 40s from me." At the time of the Capitol breach, Tario was in a Baltimore hotel room, approximately 40 miles from Washington, under a court order to stay away from the city due to an unrelated arrest 2 days before the riot. Prosecutors initially sought a 33-year prison sentence for Tario, asserting that he played a pivotal role in coordinating efforts to prevent the peaceful transfer of power to President Biden from then-President Donald Trump. Tario reportedly sent messages from his hotel room encouraging Proud Boys members to participate in the riot. Numerous individuals and groups have faced prosecution for their alleged involvement in the Capitol breach. 4 other Proud Boys members were convicted of seditious conspiracy, receiving sentences ranging from 10 to 18 years. Stuart Rhodes, chairman of the activist group Oath Keepers, received an 18-year sentence, previously the longest prison term for a Capitol riot-related conviction. Critics, including some Republican lawmakers, have accused the Biden administration of implementing a two-tiered justice system, arguing that Trump supporters involved in the Capitol breach have faced severe penalties, while left-wing activists linked to the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, resulting in property damage and casualties, have been treated differently. Former President Donald Trump was impeached by the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives on January 13, 2021 for his alleged role in inciting the Capitol riot. Trump consistently denied wrongdoing, maintaining that the allegations were politically motivated. He also continued to assert that he had won the 2020 election and that his victory was stolen from him. Reporting, this has been Jayne Codnita, SMNI News. Saudi Arabia and Russia, two of the world's largest exporters of oil, have extended voluntary oil production cuts until the end of the year. Jayne Codnita has the details.
Oil prices jumped after Saudi Arabia and Russia announced the extension of oil production cuts until December 2023. Riyadh will extend its 1 million barrel per day voluntary oil production cut, while Moscow will reduce its oil exports by 300,000 barrels per day until the end of the year. U.S. President Joe Biden last year warned Saudi Arabia of unspecified consequences for partnering with Russia on oil production cuts amid an ongoing war with Ukraine. Meanwhile, the oil-rich kingdom pledged to monitor the market and could take further action if necessary. Saudi Arabia first implemented the 1 million barrel per day cut in July and has extended it every month since then. Reporting this has been Melchizedek Cadiz, SMNI News, Kuwait.
The United Arab Emirates promised to plant 10 mangrove trees for every visitor who will attend the upcoming climate change conference in Dubai in November. reports.
The UAE is set to host the Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC, more commonly referred to as COP28, in November. The event is set to attract about 80,000 attendees from around the world. The Gulf state announced an ambitious target ahead of the international gathering by promising to plant 10 mangrove trees for every attendee. The 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference will be held between November 30 to December 12, 2023 at Expo City, Dubai. The ambitious pledge could mean that an estimated 800,000 mangrove trees could be planted in Abu Dhabi after the event. The mangrove trees will be planted in coastal areas during the winter months, which is said to be the best time for the species to grow. The Environment Agency Abu Dhabi said local officials will plant the mangroves using drone technology in the last quarter of the year. The pledge is part of the UAE National Net Zero 2050 initiative and the country's goal of planting 100 million mangroves by 2030. Reporting from Dubai, this has been Gratero Omori, SMNI News, United Arab Emirates.
In Brazil, thousands have been displaced due to a cyclone that ravaged the southern part of the country. Fatalities have also been reported. Margaret Parcasio will give us more details.
On Tuesday, officials say at least 21 have died from the extratropical cyclone that battered southern Brazil, particularly in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Among those who died included a man killed by an electrical shock in the town of Passo Fundo, and a couple whose car was swept away by a river as they tried to cross a bridge in the town of Ibiraiaras. In addition to the 21 fatalities, reports say one death was also confirmed in the neighboring state of Santa Catarina. Authorities said the state of Rio Grande do Sul saw hail and more than 300 millimeters or almost 12 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. Since the severe weather began Monday, reports say thousands have been displaced, and the City Hall at Mukum recommended that residents seek out supplies to meet their needs for the next 72 hours, as authorities warn more flooding is possible with more rain forecast from Thursday. Rio Grande do Sul Governor Eduardo Leite said that about 60 cities were affected by the storm, and Macam City Mayor Matius Trojan, quote, "There are still people missing. The death toll might climb higher," end of quote. However, President Lula da Silva said the federal government is ready to help. Currently, many of those affected are still without contact. It can be noted that around 10 million of Brazil's 203 million population are at risk of landslide or flooding due to the areas they live in. Reporting, this is Margaret Parcasio, SMNI News.
Thailand's new government officially took office this week, which ended months of political deadlock that limited the government's power to implement economic reforms. Chatmongkon Pisamay Goson reports.
Seta Tawisin led the 34 members of his cabinet to take their oaths of office in front of the King of Thailand after he was declared the country's 30th Prime Minister on August 22.
The parliament named Seta as the country's new premier after weeks of delay due to disagreements over the formation of a coalition. Thailand was embroiled in months of political deadlock after election winner and Move Forward party leader Pita Limjaroenrat faced setbacks in being elected as the country's prime minister. Pita pledged to amend the constitution and implement changes, particularly in Thailand's decades-old less majestic law, once he is officially elected as prime minister. However, the election winner failed to get the necessary votes to win the post and encountered strong opposition from the conservative military-backed Senate. The setback forced its strongest allied Pheu Thai party to break the coalition and form its own, which comprises 11 parties. Seta was one of the 3 prime ministerial candidates under Pheu Thai. In his inaugural address, the 61-year-old real estate tycoon said he would formally unveil his policy agenda next week and pledged to lead a government for the people. The oath-taking ceremony was witnessed by Thailand's King Maha Vajiralongkorn and Thailand's Queen Suthida at Dusit Palace in Bangkok on Tuesday, September 5.
Aside from being Prime Minister, Seta will also serve as the Finance Minister of Thailand. Meanwhile, Pheu Thai will hold the key posts of Foreign, Defense, Commerce, Transport, and Health Ministries. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชัดมงคล พิสมัยโกศล SMNI News ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
Thai and Chinese Navy officers are holding an annual joint military exercise in the Gulf of Thailand next week. Anisa de Guzman has the details.
More than 400 officers and soldiers from China and Thailand attended the opening ceremony of the Blue Strike 2023 joint naval training earlier this week. The annual drill will start on Sunday, September 10 in the Upper Gulf of Thailand in a marine camp in Sattahip district in Chonburi province. The joint military exercise aims to exchange naval knowledge, perform naval operations, and strengthen military ties to address regional security threats. Thai Navy officers welcomed the arrival of Chinese ships at the military site. The Chinese Naval Task Force deployed a submarine, an amphibious dock landing ship, a guided missile frigate, and a comprehensive supply ship. Blue Strike 2023 marks the 5th joint training by the navies of both countries since the military exercise started in 2010. Chinese and Thai militaries also held the Falcon Strike 2023 joint air combat drill in Thailand in July, which lasted 21 days. Chinese and Thai militaries also held the Falcon Strike 2023 joint air combat drill in Thailand in July, which lasted 21 days. The drill comes 6 months after the United States and Thailand kicked off Cobra Gold 2023 military exercises, the largest annual military exercise in Southeast Asia, attended by nearly 10,000 troops in February. Disha Anisa de Guzman, Rayngan Chakuntep Mahanakon, SMNI News, Pratat Thai, Sawadika.
President Bongbong Marcos needs to act on the political crisis in Maguindanao del Norte, and this was said by former President Rodrigo Duterte himself. According to Duterte, the president needs to act swiftly on the problem so that the problem will not escalate further. Hannah Jane Sancho reports.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is the key to ending the political crisis currently being faced by Maguindanao del Norte. And this was said by former President Rodrigo Duterte in his SMNI program, Gigan sa Masa, Para sa Masa.
Well, there is a crisis sa kanilang lugar. And because of politics. May dalawang gobernador claiming to the rightful meron namang na-appoint o yung hinati yung naiwan. Ang problema, nag-appoint ang Malacanang. So bali dalawang contending parties ngayon nag-aagawan. So there is a crisis. Ang mga empleyado Hindi nila alam kung sundin nila yung...
Maguindanao del Norte has two governors, and they are Fatima Aini Sensuat, who won vice governor of Maguindanao in the last election, and Abdul Rauf Makakua, who was appointed by President Bongbong Marcos as OIC. Sensuat insists that she should be the governor of Maguindanao del Norte in accordance with the Supreme Court's decision last June 26, 2023. The Supreme Court ruled that Sensuat, as duly elected vice governor of the province of Maguindanao, and Matsura, as next ranking member of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan of the province of Maguindanao, validly assume office as governor and vice governor respectively of the province of Maguindanao del Norte, but only in acting capacities until elections for the permanent officials to the said position have been held. However, this resulted in confusion among constituents as to who they should follow as their leader. Former President Rodrigo Duterte was asked for his opinion on the matter, and this is his response.
Alam mo, isang tawagan lang yan eh. Bahala na si Presidente Marcos kung sino ang gusto niya. I mean, we leave it to his discretion, Presidente siya. Pero he has to act to avert this thing. Isang tawag lang yan. Kung sino ang paboran niya, tawagan lang niya. Umalis ka dyan. Pag hindi tawagan mo ang arme, tanggalin mo yan dyan. Tapos na.
The former president also advised Marcos not to prolong the crisis, as it may cause bigger problems for the people of Maguindanao del Norte.
So, yung mga crisis ng ganon, it needs presidential intervention. Pagka ganon, tawagan ko lang yung isa, tingnan ko kung sino talaga, who has the better right. It's a matter of law. Now, it does not need a brilliant extraordinary man to really understand the conflicting laws involved. All you have to do is to ask your law office to give you what you should do, or whatever there is the correct law or interpretation of the law. Huwag mong habain yung uncertainty and yung division. Because it will create more problems for the people.
Meanwhile, in SMNI's program with attorney Salvador Panalo, the former chief presidential legal counsel, talk about some residents in Maguindanao del Norte who were asked for help on how to solve the problem between the two governors.
Kaya hanggang ngayon magulo, tingnan nyo. Meron ng desisyon ng Korte Suprema, nabigyan na naman damos, nag-advise na naman mga abogado ng gobyerno, wala, hindi pa naman final yan eh. Meron pang motion po. Kung ano-ano mga teknikalidad ang binibigay ninyo. Meanwhile, nagsasuffer yung tao dyan sa Del Norte kasi yung basic services mo, hindi mo maibigay. Kasi walang pera eh. Ayaw mag-release kasi nalilito rin sila.
Residents of Maguindanao del Norte pointed out that the political crisis resulted in municipal workers not being able to receive benefits and provide services for the province.
Sabi mo na nga, yung sweldo, marami ng tiyan magugutom if you do not act promptly on it. All you have to do, Presidente ka kasi, di sabihin mo, umalis ka dyan. Huwag mo akong hintayin, sisipain kita pag dumating ako dyan sa lugar ninyo. Hindi ako nag-iag. Ganon ako mag-presidente ako. Isang salita lang. Do not complicate matters. Whether you are right, you are wrong, my office, the legal office o Malacanang, abogado yan eh. Sabi nila, hindi ka raw dapat dyan muna. So, tumabi ka. Yan ang utos ng legal office.
To recall, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao issued a statement saying that they only recognize Abdul Rauf Makakua as the governor of Maguindanao del Norte. Forgotten my beloved country, this has been Jayne Sancho, SMNI News.
China announced its intention to play peacemaker in the Niger crisis following a coup that ousted its elected president, triggered sanctions, and increased tensions in the African region. And its colonial ruler, France. Cablelink files this report.
China has declared its intention to mediate and assist in resolving the ongoing political crisis in Niger. This move follows a coup in July which led to international sanctions and concerns of military intervention. Zhang Feng, the Chinese ambassador to Niamey, stated during a meeting with Niger's military-appointed Prime Minister Ali Lamin Zine that China aims to act as a mediator while respecting the sovereignty and interests of the nations involved in the crisis. He underscored China's adherence to the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. It can be noted that China has shown its role as a mediator after successfully forging a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Meanwhile, Niger's military government has been under increasing pressure from the international community, particularly the Economic Community of West African States or ECOWAS, to restore constitutional order. ECOWAS has not ruled out the possibility of using force as a last resort if diplomatic efforts fail. Meanwhile, Algeria proposed a 6-month transitional plan to restore democracy in Niger, which was met with skepticism by ECOWAS due to its perceived lengthy timeline. Several Western countries, including the United States, France, the Netherlands, and Germany have suspended foreign assistance projects in Niger in response to the coup. In contrast, China has expressed its commitment to continuing projects aligned with Nigerian authorities' interests. China has been a significant partner for Niger in various sectors, including energy, oil, and infrastructure. And both countries are jointly involved in a substantial 2,000-kilometer oil-export pipeline project aimed at transporting crude oil from southern Niger to the port of Semi in Benin. The Nigerian military had revoked deals that allowed French troops to operate in the country, which means that they now view the stay of French forces as illegal. France had already withdrawn their troops from Burkina Faso earlier this year after the country's military rulers asked them to leave. It has also pulled its forces out of Mali, following tensions with the military government following a coup in 2020. The Nigerian military has also ordered the immediate expulsion of French Ambassador Sylvain Ité. The junta enjoys the support of the masses, with thousands gathering in front of the French embassy and demanding them to leave Niger. Cablelink reporting, SMNI News.
Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ gave reminders to the country's leaders about their responsibilities according to the will of God, especially their roles in promoting peace and order rather than allowing evil to prevail in the nation. Hannah Jane Sancho reports.
A nation's success, including the kingdom nation, and prosperity is tied to its obedience to God and recognition of His laws and ordinances which are written in His Word.
Rejoice, children of God, for the day
In his
of
program,
salvation.
Sounds of Worship, aired on Sunday, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ shared some spiritual insights regarding the responsibilities of leaders and authorities governing a nation. First and foremost, Pastor Apollo emphasized the importance of having a government and the basis of responsibility for leaders as ordained by God.
The purpose why the Almighty Father has instituted government is for the good and welfare of all the people. Just imagine if there is no powers and authorities ordained of God like that, there will be anarchy in the world. Or in a nation like ours, there will be anarchy, the evil people will rule it over us, and there will be chaos, there will be lawlessness, there will be all kinds of evil that will happen. The state has the basic function to restrain evil. Leaders, rulers, wield power and authority to carry out justice against wrong.
According to the good pastor, leaders are the ones empowered to hold wrongdoers accountable and should not serve as protectors of such individuals. Pastor Apollo emphasized that this action is taken to safeguard the law-abiding citizens of the nation.
Rulers are protector of the good and punisher of the wicked. It is the duty of those in positions of authority to judge righteously and rebuke the evildoers, not the other way around. So leaders should use their authority to punish evildoers in order to protect the law-abiding citizens. Kinanglan execute dayon. Gukuron dayon ng dautan, taralon dayon, ibilanggo dayon. Kung leader ka, talagang dapat tumpak ang ginagawa mo, lalo na sa pagsugpo ng kasamaan.
According to Pastor Apollo, leaders of the nation should be the foremost enforcers of justice and equality.
Leaders should not be a terror to good conduct and should protect its citizens by instituting systems of fairness and equality. It's happening today, di ba? There are leaders who justifies the wicked and they condemn the just. Kaya marami ang nangyayari ngayong hindi maganda kasi ang justice, ang hustisya ay hindi nagaganap. So, bilang leaders, kailangan matuwid ang iyong paningin. Promotion of justice and protection of the innocent. Rulers are appointed not just to provide security, punish those who do evil, but also defend the innocent from those who would do them harm. That's the responsibility of a government. That's the responsible leaders of a government. When you are a ruler, there is authority in your hand to do judgment and justice. Kaya yung mga vengatibo na ruler, hindi pwede. Na kahit mabuting sinasabi mo, pagka hindi nila gusto, patay kang bata ka. Mamarkahan ka. Kalaban ka pa pala sa akin na. Leaders should not be like that. Pagkatapos gagawa ng paraan para ibagsak ka niya. Siraan ka. Hindi ganon. Kahit masaktan ka pa, pagkatamang sinasabi, noong nasa baba, magpakumbaba ka.
According to Pastor Apollo, leaders should prioritize the interests of the nation and the majority, rather than favoring selected individuals or privileged groups within society. This principle is also reflected in the laws of the Philippines, where it is clear that public office is a public trust, signifying that government officials and employees should serve with honesty and integrity as their sworn duty.
Public office is a public trust. Public office is a public trust means that a leader has been entrusted with public power by the people, and as an officer, he holds this power in trust to be used only for their benefit, for the benefit of the people, and never for the benefit of himself or of a few. He must safeguard the interest of the nation. Article 11, Section 1 of the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines states that public office is a public trust. Public officers and employees must at all times be accountable to the people, serve them with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency, act with patriotism and justice, and lead modest lives. That's in Article 11, Section 1 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. Ginagawa ba yan ng mga leaders natin? Kung di nila ginagawa yan, meron silang kasalanan sa Diyos. So, kanila na yon, responsibilidad nila yon. Leaders are not to use their power to oppress or favor the powerful. Ang suhol, hindi maganda.
Pastor Apollo also explained that there should be justice for employees, but not for those who seek to overthrow the government, like the terrorist groups CPP, NPA, and NDF. According to Pastor Apollo, one good example of righteousness happening in the country is the strengthening of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-LCAC, one of the government's primary branches, which suppresses the unlawful activities of terrorist rebel groups in the nation.
So, yung mga empleyado at mga employees, kailangan meron ding hustisya. Yung sinisigaw ng mga gustong pabagsakin ng gobyerno, pataasin ang sweldo. Pero sila nangingikil. When leaders punish evil, it empowers people to do good. That we rejoice when there is righteousness happening in our country. For example, sa NTF-LCAC, sinusupil, sinisikil. Bakit? Ayaw nila ng righteousness. Ayaw nilang tumulong sa kanilang mga kapwa. Bakit? Masama ang puso. Sino ang makikinabang kung ang NTF-LCAC ay mawawala? Ang mga taong gustong pabagsakin ng gobyerno. Pero kung ang NTF-LCAC ay magpapatuloy, mawawala ang mga salot na komunista, NPA at mga terorista, at magkakaroon ng tubig sa barangay, paaralan, magandang daan, at mga kabuhayan. Mabubuhay ang tao. Ayaw nila yon. Bakit ako naapunta doon? Kasi gusto ko talaga ang salot ng bayan mawala. Para ang takot ng tao mawala.
According to the good pastor, a leader should also be emotionally stable and possess a strong conviction to implement proper justice.
And rulers should not be balat sibuyas. They should not be onion-skinned. And they should not harbor hate. You know? But look at the judgment and justice as fairly and as squarely as can be.
Meanwhile, Pastor Apollo clarified that not all leaders have bad intentions because many of them are for the welfare of the nation.
So hindi lahat ng mga leaders nakikita natin masama. Marami riyan mabubuti. Nahahaluan lang ng masama. So pagka tayo ay naghahatol, huwag hatulan lahat. Huwag lahatin. Meron ding mga mabubuting leaders na may mabubuting puso.
Pastor Apollo added that a leader's style of governance reflects on the nation's citizens. If governance is done properly in the government, the citizens will also lead upright lives. However, if it is not done correctly, the result will be chaotic, and it will be the consequence of the wrong system being implemented.
You will know a nation of what kind of a leader there is. Look at the fruits of that. Look at the result of that leadership. If the leader wants cleanliness, and he has that spirit of being clean and cleanliness, everything that is under him will be clean. If the leader wants order or law or order, the result will be law and order. If there is chaos, then that leader is chaotic. Because the failure and success of everything depends on the leader. It depends on a leader. It may be a group, organization, community, a city, a nation. Look at the result of his leadership. The result is the people. What kind of people are there? Are they unruly? Are they lawless? Are they dirty? Is there chaos? There's no order? Do not look at the people. Look at the leader. If the leader wants righteousness, all his people will be righteous. Praise the Father. If the people wanted, if the leader wanted everything a leader, because he has power and authority in his hands, anything that the leader wants will happen when he wants it to happen. So, kikita mo doon. Kahit sino pang humaharang yan, basta gusto ng leader, ganun ang mangyari.
In the end, Pastor Apollo reminded that an essential step for leaders is to approach God and seek the right guidance for proper governance.
So, it's always good for leaders to seek wise and godly counsel when making important decisions.
It should be noticed that Pastor Apollo is one of the advocates of the principle of nation building, where all citizens should also unite with their leaders for the progress of the nation.
For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Jayne Sancho, SMNI News.
Amid escalating tensions due to territorial disputes, former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte vehemently denied making any promises to remove the BRP Sierra Madre from Ayungin Shoal during his term. Furthermore, the former president expressed strong disagreement with China's new 10-dash line, which suggests a broader territorial claim for Beijing, particularly in the South China Sea. Valdivia Gracia reports.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte clarified that he did not promise to remove the BRP Sierra Madre from Ayungin Shoal during his term. This statement comes in response to the Makabayan Bloc's call for clarity regarding speculations about whether he made such a promise to China. Former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo had previously denied the allegations, as did two sons of former President Joseph Estrada, who were accused of making a similar promise to remove the controversial ship from Ayungin Shoal.
They're dreaming. I did not discuss anything about territory. For one, what is there in the map is ours. We are not claiming an area over what is really legally ours. So, yung Sierra Madre, sabi ng Pilipinas, ay atin, yung area na yan. So, let it just remain there. As part, maybe as a symbolic thing to put notice on everybody na atin yan, which is good. Iba yung magkaibigan tayo, iba yung teritoryo ko. Panliit-liit na natin, tapos kunan pa nila. Hindi na maganda yan.
Meanwhile, like the statements of other leaders in Asia and officials of the Philippine government, former President Duterte stated that he does not agree with the 10-dash line being promoted by China. According to Duterte, he is a close friend of Chinese President Xi, but when it comes to issues of territory and the country's interests, he will stand up for what is rightfully ours.
The 10-dash line is a, how do they call it, it's a scheme of setting up boundaries by China that would take a large part of the Indian Ocean and itong the waters that we have, na medyo nalimitahan tayo ng just a few kilometers from our shores, which China is a friend, personally ako, kay President Xi Jinping. But I would state now na hindi ako sang-ayon sa yung 10-dash line. And I'm no longer in government. Pero kung sabihin mo na magsunod ako sa yung characterization ng boundaries nila, hindi ako. So, although I do not want to quarrel with China, I was there just a few months ago, a few weeks, because President Xi Jinping is a friend. And when we landed on Chinese territory, there was this invitation for me to go to see Mr. Xi Jinping, the President. Magkaibigan kami. Pero okay lang yung pagkaibigan namin. It does not include what is the interest of my country.
Regarding this issue in May of this year, the House Bill number 7819 was approved during its third and final reading in the Congress. This bill declares maritime zones under the jurisdiction of the country. According to House Speaker Martin Romualdez, this proposed legislation provides flexibility in implementing the laws related to the rights and obligations that the country may enforce within its maritime zone. 8 senators also introduced their respective bills for similar reasons. Recently, former Philippine ambassador to Greece and Cyprus Rigoberto Tiglao published an opinion article expressing concerns that under the proposed legislation being pushed in Congress regarding maritime zones, it is possible that a Kalayaan group of violence could be lost once it becomes a law. However, for former President Duterte, the flexibility provided by these proposed bills is not enough because what the country needs is a clear boundary that asserts ownership.
I do not need the word flexibility. In defining our territory, there should be a clear-cut boundaries which we claim to be ours on outside of our jurisdiction. Mahirap yung flexibility because it could mean more discussions and more troubles in the future.
According to the former president, this action could potentially lead to different interpretations in the future, so it is better for us to clarify the true boundaries of our country.
Ayaw ko yung you want to be categorical and set up a new baseline dito kung saan ang atin. I would rather have a clear cut, maski na the bigger the better. Tubig lang naman yan eh. So kung tubig lang pag-usapan natin, it's all water. I would rather that I would have a bigger share of the portion of the ocean at which we are facing, either on the Pacific area or dito sa ating is it Indian Ocean? Dito banda sa taas. Yung pababa, yun na yung conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Yun ang akin. Ayaw ko yung flexibility, mahirap yun. It could give rise to a different interpretation or can have a more expansive definition. Mahirap yun. Mas mabuti yung klaro.
According to Duterte, he will not allow the Philippines' long contested territories to fall into the hands of other countries, even if they are allies. He stated that he is ready to fight for and defend the country's territories to death.
As far as I'm concerned, yung territory natin is non-negotiable and it is freed of whatever friendship is one, alliance is another one, but the territory itself must be ours. Kung maaari lang, ako pa yung mag-agaw. If I were to have my way, I'd rather expand it until the shores of India and China. I am not about ready to give up a part of the territory of my country,
which is ours.
We'll defend it to death if need be. Atin yan.
Yes.
Former President Duterte emphasized that one of the sources of food and livelihood for the country is the surrounding seas. That's why it is crucial to protect it. He believes that the future of the nation is at stake making this issue highly sensitive in his view.
I would never yung liitan yung teritoryo ko. Kasi mahirap lang tayo na bayan. We need a bigger expanse of the waters for our use, our resources, to get food. And it's all tubig na nakukuha natin, yung sa tubig na nakukuha natin yung mga resources natin. Yan ang ano yan. That's why it's a very sensitive issue to me when it comes to territory. I would never give an inch. So yan ang ano, that's the rationale of the way I think about tong mga territories. Lalo na yung territories that would produce food and whatever resources that we can get. But mainly food. We do not want to quarrel. We cannot afford it. But I would say that when it comes to conflicting claims, we must insist on it. Because our existence is connected with the issue. Kailangan natin ng areas to get what I said God has placed there, whether it's the Pacific or the Indian or the Atlantic.
It's worth noting that former President Duterte is known for his foreign policy approach of friends to all, enemy to none. Under his leadership, the Philippines sought opportunities for deeper engagement with China and Russia, a stance that was not always aligned with Western countries. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Val Divina Gracia, SMNI News.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the message of the appointed Son of God. Every challenge and every path of trials and tests we go through is a path toward our own spiritual experience to maturity. And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit SMNINewsChannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts on Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Jayne Codnita. Thank you for watching Newsline World, and thank you to our beloved Pastor Apollo C. Cablelink, for the opportunity to be part of this program. May you continue to listen to SMNI as it delivers nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news, because SMNI is your source of credible news.